So let's start with why you're in the area. Is it the industry or Commerce Week or Commerce?
Well, I mean, we've got Manufacturing Month. It's Manufacturing Month, right?
Yes, sir.
How you doing? Nice to see you.
Jake Kurtz, I'm a reporter.
You want to sit down? That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is a good time to highlight manufacturing in the state of Wisconsin, but the fact of the matter is, this is what I've been doing since got elected. You just travel around the state and, visit businesses, visit high schools, colleges, give my PowerPoint presentation, really find out what's happening in the state, find out what issues are on, the minds of your citizens and on parts of people struggling to make a business succeed and provide good paying jobs.
Did you stop at Thermal Spray in
Right.
Sun Prairie?
Yeah, pretty impressive manufacturing operation, doing some pretty unique things, real specialty business, really impressive and growing.
Switching gears a little bit, have you heard anything more about Benghazi? I know you've been out front on that issue quite a bit.
Now, I think, the House is, I think, doing a pretty thoughtful job of going through, what information they can extract from this administration. Began holding some hearings. I think the first round of hearings, I think, did a pretty good job asking questions, which is really what they need to do. There are still questions that are answered that I think the American people deserve answers on. The American people deserve the truth.
Being a member of the Committee on Foreign Relations, are you concerned about Ebola?
Oh, highly concerned. And we're not doing enough. I support the administration's efforts to send help to Western Africa so we can try and contain it there. That's the best line of defense, is see if we can contain it to West Africa. But from our own standpoint, we've got to keep America safe. And this is a time where you'd rather be safe than sorry. And so from my standpoint, I'm not in favor of banning flights because, first of all, that wouldn't be effective enough. If you just ban flights from West Africa to America, well, what happens to the people that get out of West Africa and originate in another country? What we should be doing is we should be checking passports, and anybody that has been in one of those West African nations in the last 30 days, we should quarantine them when they come to America. And let's make sure they're isolated. We can do it in nice facilities. Just make sure that those individuals aren't set loose in population in case they are carrying the Ebola virus, that they infect more people and we create a bigger problem here in America.
The incident that happened in Dallas with the Ebola patient,
Well, that's a classic example of what we should not allow to happen. That gentleman, what we should have done is seen that he just came directly from, I believe it was Liberia, and we should have put him in isolation for 21 days. He obviously would have gotten sick, but he would have potentially infected, the number of people who may have been infected. I mean, let's keep our fingers crossed. Let's hope the people he came in contact with never contract or come down with Ebola. But that was really an instance that was really mishandled. We should learn from those mistakes. And here's what people really need to understand. Right now, the way the administration is handling this is they're doing it the way a bureaucrat would. Say, well, okay, we didn't ask enough questions. There are not enough questions you can possibly answer. Put yourself in a position of somebody in a West African state that has Ebola raging. Let's say you accidentally come in contact with an Ebola victim. What's the first thing you're going to do? I mean, if the means, what I would do is I would hop on a plane and I'd come to America, because you got to think that maybe you could be saved in a hospital in America when you're not going to be saved in Liberia. So most human beings, if not every human being, would probably say anything to get on that plane, get on that flight, get into America. We need to recognize that basic human tendency, and we need to protect ourselves against that.
So the questionnaires they're doing are really ineffective?
Oh, it's if it weren't so sad, it'd be laughable. They won't be effective at all. I mean, really, do you think somebody's going to be truthful? If you were exposed, would you say,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I got exposed?
Yeah.
Here's the danger. You say that, you'll be probably quarantined in Liberia with other people that have Ebola.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even if you aren't infected, you're probably guaranteed that you will become infected. So
Yeah.
nobody's going to answer a questionnaire like that truthfully. But again, that's the bureaucrat's mindset. Just saying, well, if we have another form, if we institute another procedure, will people actually be truthful? You're just denying basic human nature. And so we've got to actually acknowledge reality, accept basic human nature, and protect ourselves against it.
When you're going to these high schools, what kind of reaction are you getting when you do the budget talk and the financial stuff.
Well, when their jaws don't, drop. The same reaction I get across the board. Nobody understands the extent of the problem, or virtually nobody does. So many times, even in Washington, D.C., we confine our discussions to a 10-year budget window, which dramatically understates the size of the problem. The fact of the matter is the definition of the problem is a 30-year demographic bubble. We have the baby boom generation. We're retiring at the rate of 10,000 people per day. Politicians from both parties have made promises over the decades that we have no way to pay for them. And so the deficits that we're facing over the next 30 years are enormous. According to the Congressional Budget Office, their ultimate fiscal scenario shows the budget over the next 30 years will be $127 trillion. $8 trillion the first decade, $31 trillion the second decade, $88 trillion the third decade. Now, just in case you think 30 years is a short period of time, my little baby just turned 31 and that went by like that. By the way, to put that in perspective, the entire net private asset base of America today is $106 trillion. In other words, every asset held by every household, every business large and small. So we've got the potential for deficits that exceed the net private asset base of America today. So yeah, I get the same reaction from young people, particularly then when I say your share of the federal debt today. Every man, woman, and child's share of the federal debt is over $55,000. In 10 years, it would be $75,000. And when I'm talking to young people, I always point out the fact, unfortunately, that, well, because you're young, you better tack on $150,000 for your parents' share and $150,000 for your grandparents' share, because that debt's not going away. You are going to bear that full burden. You, your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids. So I'm just really asking the audience, do you understand what we're doing to our kids? It's just immoral, the intergenerational theft that we're imposing on our kids.
Getting back to the tour, what kinds of things are you seeing that you can help with as a senator to help foster more innovation, maybe more entrepreneurship in Wisconsin?
Well, there are a couple of universal problems that manufacturers are having. First of all, having to comply with federal regulations. And that's something, if we get the majority in the Senate, Republicans, I'll be chairman of the Homeland Security Government Affairs Committee. Now, Government Affairs really has oversight over the entire federal government, so I can have, I think, a great deal of impact of highlighting some of those harmful regulations, trying to reach out to colleagues on the other side, my Democratic Senate colleagues, trying to find the areas of agreement. We're going to disagree on all kinds of things, but surely there must be some areas of agreement, particularly in regulations that are harming businesses in their states as well, and try and find some common ground to start reducing that regulatory burden. Another big problem we have in manufacturing is it's hard to find people that are willing to work in manufacturing. Regardless of the economic conditions, I was a manufacturer for 31 years, for the last 20 at least, it was hard to find people that would work in manufacturing, partly because, if not, almost entirely because of the fact, for decades now, we've been telling our kids, you got to get a 4-year degree.
Yeah, you have to go to college.
You don't want to be a factory worker or a plumber or electrician. I can't tell you how wrong that thinking is. All work has value. And we need those electricians, those plumbers, those people that will develop some great careers in manufacturing. And that's part of my message. There are great careers in manufacturing. There are all kinds of high-paying jobs in manufacturing today. You don't even have to go to school. Get out of high school, find those manufacturers, tell those businesses that you want to come and contribute, and you'll find that a lot of manufacturers will actually pay for your education. Mm-hmm. You'll develop a work ethic. Maybe you decide you don't like it. That's okay. Go to school a couple years later, when you'll probably be far more motivated. You might even get out of college in 4 years with a 4-year degree as opposed to the 5.5 it's taking kids right now to do it. So there's so many benefits to having kids and their parents recognize all the options that are available to them when they graduate from high school. Hey, if you want a 4-year degree, great. If you want a 2-year associate degree or a technical college degree, maybe go in the military or maybe go right into the workforce and go into those manufacturing jobs. You may find a really good career, not get into debt, and really have a great life.
On voter ID, now it's off again. It was on again before, and it was off again before that.
It's very unfortunate. Listen, voting is a right, and we want everybody to recognize or take advantage of that right. But we also want to make sure that if I cast a ballot or if you cast a ballot, it's not going to be canceled by somebody who's voting that's not eligible to vote. or there's voting 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times. You know, you've got to eliminate voter fraud. And let's face it, in here in Wisconsin, we know voting fraud occurs, and I have no idea why anybody would be opposed to a pretty simple measure of just proving through a photo ID who you are. I mean, we do it in so many different areas of our life already. Getting on an airplane, you know, buying drugs.
Video rental?
Yeah, you know, come on. This is not an onerous requirement. I think this is a real shame. This is another problem with the courts overruling a democratic result. And I think that's just a real problem we have today in today's political discussions.
Do you feel that today Wisconsin's current tax climate makes it uncompetitive in relation to the manufacturing industry? And if so, what changes would you like to see? Well,
we're moving in the right direction. And you know, I always said this because I believe it. One of the more powerful things Governor Walker ever did is when he became governor, was his first statement just about Wisconsin's open for business. That's the first step. You have to make sure that America or Wisconsin is an attractive place for business risk-taking, business investment, expansion, job creation. That's the first step, is let's make sure that businesses realize we're going to welcome you. Now, Governor Walker comes into office with the structure already in place. A very high marginal tax rate in comparison to other states like Texas that are growing dramatically because they don't have that high income tax.
Sure.
And so it takes time to realign the structure within your state, but Scott Walker's moving in the right direction. What I don't want to see is have us backslide and start punishing and demonizing success again. Let's incentivize, let's celebrate success, but we're a long ways from there yet. I mean, we really are. There's a reason Texas is growing dramatically and other states are having a more difficult time. But again, I can't praise Governor Walker enough for the steps he's already taken to make it more attractive, be in manufacturing or agriculture or you know, just really start a business in Wisconsin, because first and foremost, Wisconsin's going to welcome business creation.
With 2014 winding down, going into the new year, what are some of your kind of goals, expectations, and things you want to get done in 2015?
Well, I hope Republicans get a majority in the Senate. If so, that chairmanship of that Homeland Security Government Affairs Committee will be very important, because Homeland Security is going to be about border security. It's about cybersecurity. It's about some real threats that face this nation that need to be fixed. And certainly as chairman of the committee, I would do everything possible to finally secure our border, to provide an information sharing bill on cybersecurity to try and protect our cyber assets. And then on the government affairs part of that committee, again, you've got jurisdiction over the entire federal government in terms of oversight, so hopefully we could utilize that committee to hold hearings and highlight to the American public how damaging and how ineffective so many of these regulations are. Listen, we need the rules of the road. We need laws. You know, we need rules and regulations to keep us safe and prevent monopolies and keep a functioning free market system. But we've gone way overboard. I mean, a regulatory burden of $1.8 trillion. That's what the competitive enterprise system estimates the regulatory burden. Let me put that number in perspective. Only 10 economies in the world are larger than $1.8 trillion. That's how much we are burdening our job creators with. Is it any wonder our economy's having a hard time taking off? But just a quick ad, because a lot of people talk about, what do we do to increase wages? The way to increase wages is, again, get government out of the way, make sure America's a more attractive place for that business investment and expansion, and then you get a robust economy where businesses have to compete for labor. I mean, that's how you get higher wages on a self-sustaining basis.
That's it.
I'm good.
Okay. Great, thanks, appreciate it.